Hey everyone, I'd like to welcome you to the show and just remind everyone that we have shirts in the shop. Go to pgttcm.com. You can pick up shirts, stickers. We even have those shower curtains I was talking about last time. Also, you can join us on Patreon and get a free sticker. Check out the show notes and learn how you can be a part of People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos. Rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends, help support the show any way you can. Patreon users, you get a free sticker, at least. So check out what we've got. Show notes, that's where you're going to find our PayPal link and our sponsors and any information about any guests that are on the show and where to find them. Thank you.
You're listening to KZOM, Oleander Public Radio. Greetings, listeners. It is I, TV Spitzer Informer Dave, here once again to talk to you about the Cthulhu mythos, its books, its monsters, its unfortunate human casualties, its timeline in general, and even its tangential bits, like the Dreamlands or things of a weird nature that are Lovecraftian leaning. Once more we head into those dark woods, further feeling those malevolent forces upon us. Once again we walk down the lightless stone staircase in the middle of nowhere. You're listening to KZOM.
Hey everyone, it is I, DB Spitzer, and to my right, Farmer Dave. How's it going, Dave?
I am well for the new year, and I hope that our listeners are too.
Yeah, everyone, I hope you are having a wonderful 2022. And I hope everything's well in your neck of the woods. It's kind of drizzly cold. The snow's melted. There's little bits here and there on the road, big patches in the graveyard here and there, and any place where there's a lot of shadows. The rain hasn't washed it all away, but you know it's pretty gloomy looking out here. It's cold. It's drizzly. I had to walk to the medical center to get my booster shot and my flu shot today because I had an appointment, and oh man, I had to change socks right before the show. So
yes, so you know what? 2022 is backwards.
What's 2022 backwards?
2202.
Oh, I thought it was going to be some joke.
That was the joke, that there is no punchline.
Oh, I gotcha. All right. And
once again, being too sophisticated and witty for our audience, send hate mail to Farmer Dave, care of...
I don't... Yeah, pgttcm.com. Yes. Year of the Tiger, I believe. Year of the Tiger. So,
yes.
Yeah, I would have thought last year was Year of the Tiger with all that Tiger King.
Yes. So do you know what Chinese New Year's? Do you know what I am?
You are... No, I don't.
I am a fire goat.
Ooh, I am a metal dragon.
Oh, well, so every year, you know, they have the Chinese New Year, and you go as some sort of representation of your creature. So I think felony is or your sign. So felony is, you know, a water rat. So she goes as a pirate. Gotcha. You know, one of Louis's kids is a fire pig. So he goes as bacon.
Nice.
And I am a fire goat. So this year I'm going as Baphomet.
I just wear a dragon T-shirt and play metal. So you know.
That fits right in.
Yeah. No, I've seen it. I've been to Louis's New Year's party, which is going to be. Oh shoot! When is New Year's? The other New Year's, the funner New Year's.
So yeah, it's coming up.
It's in February.
End of January, early February.
Okay.
New Year's
cool.
Or Chinese or Asian New Year. So we got a little bit of time before, you know, we get all go down to Oblivions and
Oh, yeah.
And
celebrate the new year.
Second, I know we've had one New Year's, but can we have a second New Year's?
I mean, any new calendar year is celebrated at Oblivion's, which is pretty nice. Whether it be Sumerian or the the Gregorian, even the Julian calendar. So yeah.
I celebrate Julian New Year with fries.
Nice.
Julian fries.
Well,
send your hate mail to Farmer Dave.
Or send better puns to Farmer Dave.
Stop me before I pun again.
Yeah, we're not trying to rip off blurry photos there, but if you do want to send Dave better puns, feel free. Punch up Dave's jokes at pgttcm.com/contact, and you can write to us. Hey, what are we talking about this week?
So we are talking about Joey Kerwin.
Joseph Kerwin. I went to high school with that guy. I think it might be a different Joey Kerwin, but
I think maybe you went to high school with his great-great-grandson.
Okay.
That's because, well, that was a Charles Dexter Ward.
Charles Dexter Ward.
For those of you who got it.
Yeah.
Both of you, thank you.
Yeah.
So Joseph Kerwin, of course, appears in The Case of Charles Dexter Ward.
Yeah.
Which is, I believe, the largest surviving Lovecraft story word count. It's got a little over 51,000 words.
Cool.
And it's right there with The Mountains of Madness. I think it is the longest thing that he wrote that survives.
Interesting. And we are also talking about, I believe we're talking about Cyäegha today at some point.
Yes, we are.
All right. And that's some sort of tentacled eye monster, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
That's about now. The audience knows about as much as about Cyäegha as there is to know. But we'll go in a little bit more detail.
Cool. And let's see. You're talking to Scott Glancy.
Yes, we are. We are talking about spies in horror.
Ooh, that's cool. That's super cool. I don't know enough about spies ever to talk about spies with Scott, so that's pretty
the way
awesome.
The spies like it.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, just to let everyone know, not this episode, but next episode, we're going to have a special guest, and that special guest is my new Glary guitar. I'm getting it tomorrow in the mail, so you're going to hear my new hollow body Glary with the trapeze pickup, trapeze bridge. And so check that out. And go to check the show notes out and look for the link to save some money at Glary. And also, hey, Copper Cow, also the show's sponsor. Check out Copper Cow Pour Over Coffee. A couple packages in a box. You can get a subscription, and that subscription will keep you going month to month so that you don't have to, just go to the website over and over to get your Copper Cow. So, Dave, who the heck is this Joseph Kerwin character?
So Joseph Kerwin is the antagonist or the bad guy in the case of Charles Dexter Ward.
Okay.
And so this was, as near as I can tell, completely written by Lovecraft. Okay. But was not published for at least 3 years, I believe. It was serialized May to July 1941. Okay. So it was published posthumously. And Donald Wundry and August Derleth submitted it to Weird Tales. Okay. Now, you always got to be sort of questionable when August Derleth gets in his hands on something that's published after Lovecraft's death. But I think Wundry maybe kept him from messing with it. There may have been some editing, there may be some change, but I don't think anyone that I'm aware of really doubts that this is 99% Lovecraft.
All right.
It's definitely, it reads Lovecraft.
Okay.
In fact, it gets a lot better. I had a lot of problems in the beginning of the book because of all of this architecture porn that Lovecraft describes, a page or so about these different buildings that are real buildings. So I really don't think that this was changed much from the way Lovecraft wrote it. So basically, Chucky Dexter Ward, or Charles Dexter Ward, gets interested in black magic and he brings forth his dead relative, which is Joseph Curwen, who kills him. And Kerwin looks like Charles Dexter Ward, so he starts passing himself off. Spoilers, sorry. So we're going to be talking about an 80-year-old story, and we're probably assuming that you know this story if you're remotely into Lovecraft, because that's probably one of his most famous. But sorry about that. There's spoilers. So Charles Dexter Ward gets killed in his own book relatively quick. And Kerwin basically lives his life. But, he's, a couple hundred years old. He's from Revolutionary time. So he doesn't quite pull it off. And so he gets locked into an insane asylum.
Okay. No, that's what happens. And something I wanted to point out before you get back to what you're talking about is something I think is funny, and I think I've pointed this out online before, is that the case, the strange case, the case of Charles Dexter Ward is two guys pretending to be one guy, while the strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is one guy pretending to be two people.
That's actually a very, very good point there.
I just think it's a little weird that they have both have the case of, but
and I'm sure Lovecraft had probably read that.
Oh, sure,
read Stevens, or at least was aware of it. And Lovecraft doesn't really do characters. Characters are secondary to words and story to Lovecraft. But this is he creates a rather complex, interesting, filled out character. I mean, he wants to, he's evil and he's black magic, but for Lovecraft, it's a pretty filled out character.
Sure.
And one of the interesting things is he has this sort of network of other black wizards and dark wizards and Yog-Sothoth worshippers that he keeps in contact with. I was thinking, and I was taking a shower, because we always have our best thoughts in the shower. But I was thinking, I was trying to think of sort of Joseph Kerwin, where he would sort of fit in like if he was a supervillain.
Okay.
And I started thinking of all of sort of Lovecraft's antagonists as supervillains, and I'm kind of created in my mind this Legion of Doom for Lovecraftian antagonists. Okay. And so I was thinking, Kerwin would first be, first I thought, well, he'd be Lex Luthor, but I kind of thought, who made more sense as the Lex Luthor character is the Robert Sugan, who's the bad guy, horror at Red Hook.
Okay.
So I would say if I was going to give Joseph Kerwin I'd make him Sinestro.
Oh, I was going to say
Sinestro of the team.
Brainy.
He has power. He's kind of a snarker there.
Sure.
He definitely can manipulate and change things.
Yeah.
I don't know where would you put him?
Oh, Brainiac.
Brainiac. That was my other thought. Was possibly Brainiac. I'm not quite sure.
Definitely not Toyman.
Maybe Herbert West is Brainiac.
Ooh, yeah, no. I think Herbert West is Toyman.
Toyman, okay. And I was thinking, Kaisa Mason or the witch from Dreams of the Witch House. She's either probably Cheetah or Giganta.
Yeah.
But so. I would definitely. I think though that he lines up parallel with Sinestro.
Yeah.
And the other interesting thing, we don't think of this. It's kind of a time travel story.
Yeah, definitely.
He time travels by dying, and then he gets resurrected by his great grandson or whatever, or whatever relative, and then he pays him off by coming. But it really is sort of a time travel story.
Yeah.
The other thing I think was really interesting about this and Kerwin, besides the fact that he's got this, he's also kind of, if I had to put him with anyone else, he's kind of a Moriarty figure. He's got this network all around, maybe even Fu Manchu.
Ooh.
But he's got this network that he can't always trust. But the other thing that he's definitely, I think, like a Moriarty figure. He's got this sort of secret cults and followers that he needs to sort of make fear him instead of trust him.
Yeah. Kind of like the classic pulp villain who would, you fool! Shoot the bungler, like Dr. Zenwood and Johnny Quest episodes.
Yes. And no matter what, and when I think of him, despite how he's described, he is always going to look like Vincent Price to me. Because he's basically Roger Corman did the Haunted Palace, which is really the case of Charles Dexter Ward. In fact, I believe Vincent Price's character is Charles. He uses the Haunted Palace. Joseph Kerwin is the name, and Price just nails both this Charles Dexter Ward sort of. He's more of an innocent character. I mean, at least in Lovecraft, the guy was into black magic and studying the occult. In the Haunted Palace, Charles Dexter Ward's he just sort of ended up in the wrong place at the wrong time and ended up inheriting this haunted palace. But and I was fortunate enough, and you probably did too, about 2 or 3 years ago, the Lovecraft Film Festival in the Hollywood Theater did this full screen.
It was lovely.
And so it wasn't the first time I'd seen it, but it was the first time I'd seen it in full screen.
Yeah, it was the first time I'd seen it, and the first time I'd seen it in full screen. So, it's a great film.
And Vincent Price, he just tears up the screen.
Oh, yeah.
As Joseph Kerwin. And he just, everything you expect. So, you want to know who Joseph Kerwin is? He's Vincent Price evil character.
Oh, yeah. I definitely would go with Vincent Price. Yeah, Joseph Kerwin.
So there's another version of Joseph Kerwin. It's not a visual one, but it's an audio one that I really like.
Ooh.
And that was about 3, maybe 4 years now, but I think it was about 3 years ago. BBC Podcasting did The Case of Charles Dexter Ward.
I remember you mentioning this a billion years ago, but I haven't checked it out yet, but I have to.
So they kept the story, but they basically changed it to the format to a true crime podcast.
That is really cool.
And the actors and even the new characters they brought up, it definitely it was highly done.
Yeah.
Now, there's something else that I thought about this too, and I know that you can't talk about Joseph Kerwin without talking about the case of Charles Dexter Ward.
Sure.
But yeah, and something else I thought, so Dexter, we think of Dexter as a first name.
Yeah.
But there's also in The Haunter in the Dark, this Dr. Dexter that throws the glowing trapezoid. Dexter is a very common East Coast established family last name. And we see, Pickman, and we have, Pickman Derby.
Yeah.
So a lot of characters, so Dexter, a lot of Lovecraftian characters have last names for middle names.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about that. You think of it because it's Howard Phillips Lovecraft. Phillips is his mom's maiden name. It's not Philip, like in Cast the Deadly Spell. It's Phillips. And I think it was pretty common in the East Coast, especially at that time, to have, especially, the Phillips were a much more prosperous family than the Lovecrafts.
Oh yeah, definitely. It is. Like my father's middle name is of his father's mother's family, who is fairly prosperous. So he got that as a middle name, which I in turn received as a middle name as well. But
so I think a lot of Lovecraft characters will have last names or middle names.
Oh sure, yeah.
Because I think because Lovecraft did.
Definitely, and that's just something that's kind of done with like families that have like attached to other prominent families. It's like, well, I don't know how many people ended up with like Roosevelt or Vanderbilt as their middle names, but I've definitely heard people with Roosevelt as their middle name. That's definitely a naming convention. East Coast, West Coast. Some families do it of like, mother's maiden name for like the firstborn or something like that. But and Charles Dexter Ward, which we're not talking about this week, not talking about for a while, but that is a good story, and Joseph Kerwin is such a great villain, and it's like Joseph Kerwin is more of what the story is about than, say, Charles Dexter Ward. Yeah, Charles Dexter Ward is just like, I don't know. So he's the victim. Yeah, he's the victim. But
he's the victim of the crime.
Yeah.
So it is his case, but he's also the persona that Kerwin takes on.
Sure, definitely. But honestly, Charles Dexter Ward is one of the least important characters in this story, except for the fact that Charles Dexter Ward knew black magic and had an ancestor who was a spooky wizard. Just happened to be unlucky enough to know black magic.
So Ward is what a lot of characters in Lovecraft are.
Oh yeah.
Plot device.
Oh yeah.
Where Kerwin is much more a character.
Definitely. Yeah, and I want to say, like, the Doctor in the second half of the case of Charles Dexter Ward is far more of an interesting character than Charles Dexter Ward. It's like there's so many people in this story and there's not that many people in this story that are more interesting than Charles Dexter Ward. And Joseph Kerwin, it's like I would love stories written about Joseph Kerwin in the Revolutionary era. That would be a fun story. I'd read those. Being the antagonist of I don't know, say a bunch of people in revolutionary or pre-revolutionary New England. Yeah.
And we get to learn a lot about his life in not really flashbacks, but in revealing and finding things in the books, and Dr. Allen discovering.
Yeah. I don't think there's much more for us to discover about Charles Dexter Ward's super duper ancestor, Joseph Curwen.
I think we've got it covered. Don't use black magic to resurrect your great granddad.
I mean,
it's going to kill you and take your life.
Definitely. I was thinking about this earlier, and it's like, when you watch a YouTube video and someone's doing something and they're like, don't do this at home. We're professionals. We know what we're doing. We have safety goggles and all this other stuff. I wish there would have been something for Charles Dexter Ward to be like, if you summon a dead relative, make sure that you have this going on, or they will take over your life.
Yes, this has been a PSA from the People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos.
Up next, we will have some Scott Glancy, and then after that, we will be talking about Cyäegha. All right, see you after the break, everyone.
All right, and we are back, and this is the interview portion of the show, and I'm really excited. Someone who I have listened to and watched and read. In fact, you were at the first CthulhuCon that I ever went to as a
Which
speaker.
one was that? Which one was that?
That was about 6 years ago, the one that they had at the hotel.
Oh, you mean in Portland?
In Portland, yeah.
Yes, the CthulhuCon. Yes, I remember that. That was that actually ran amazingly smoothly for their first time out.
Yeah, and so this is Adam Scott Glancy, and Scott, you want to maybe introduce yourself and let other people know who you are and what you've done?
Sure. At the moment, I am primarily known for being one of the creators and developers of Delta Green, which began its life as a supplement for the 5th and 6th editions of Call of Cthulhu back in 1996, I believe it was, when we first published it, through Pagan Publishing, which was sort of a small boutique gaming publisher that did a lot of support work for Call of Cthulhu back in the day. We've re-released the game now in the 21st century. Delta Green is now a standalone game using its own set of rules and its own take on the Cthulhu mythos, but the themes remain the same. That is to say, we originally looked at the idea of UFO conspiracy theories that were kicking around in the 1990s, just before the X-Files came out. And the very first Delta Green material actually was published just before the X-Files came out in 93. But the idea was, can we merge the current mythology of various conspiracy theories with the Cthulhu mythos? And our big successes were merging the idea that the Mi-Go from the Whisper in Darkness were really behind all the abductions, and maybe the Yithians with their mind swaps were behind all the instances of missing time that were such a big deal in 1990s UFOlogy. Dennis Detweiler came up with a great idea of taking the Tillinghast resonator from the short story From Beyond and making it the device aboard the USS Eldridge for the Philadelphia experiment that caused the ship to disappear and reappear. So we sort of went through a lot of conspiracy and recent modern occult sort of ideas and tried to hook that stuff up in ways that would be entertaining for Call of Cthulhu players to encounter in a modern setting. And since then, Delta Green has gone on to spawn novels, short story collections, all basically built around the theme of government agents investigating the Cthulhu mythos. And our big inspiration for that was, of course, the Lovecraft story, The Shadow of Innsmouth, where we thought, gee, the government can't possibly have missed all those deep ones they captured. They must know something is up starting in 1927, 1928. What's happened since then? You know,
Excellent.
What has been the progress or lack of progress that has occurred since the government swooped down and hauled off the population of Innsmouth, a la Japanese American citizens being interred, during World War II. So that's the main thing that I've been involved with. I've had a few other game publishing successes over the years and fiction publishing successes over the years, but a lot of it's been related to the mythos, and so which I expect is why you're having me on.
Absolutely. In fact, so we've kind of discussed this, but what I really wanted to talk to you about was spies and horror. And
Okay.
I had this thought that the whole idea of spies is that there's this hidden world. There's these Russian illegals. There's number stations. There's NSA surveillance. Those are real things. But we don't see this on our surface world. Real good horror, I think, has the same sort of the wainscoting where we don't see the real world. We see this illusionary world that the monsters let us see, and that the horror is behind it. And if we peel back this old wallpaper, then we see the real world. And to me, they seem very similar. So I'm kind of surprised there's not more espionage and horror.
Yeah, it was a really natural fit when we started developing Delta Green as a concept. And the idea being Delta Green is the name of an old department of the OSS during the Second World War. It was the name of the clearance that you had to have in order to hear about Innsmouth or hear about supernatural events that affected national security. And it is about, there are two worlds. There is the surface world where we go about our normal daily life, and then just beyond it, there is this shadow world. And of course, espionage is often referred to as a shadow world, and then again, so is the supernatural.
Yeah, the paranormal.
And I can't help but notice that coming out of, I want to say, the Second World War, what was one of the most popular nicknames for people engaged in espionage, but spooks.
Spook, yeah.
Yeah.
And the fact that there really was paranormal espionage programs like remote viewing and...
Yep. Project Stargate managed to very successfully waste a fair amount of taxpayer dollars on remote viewing. And then there's sort of things that are sort of like a little more creepy, like all the money that was spent on things like Project, was it MK Artichoke, MK Ultra? I want to say it went through, there were a couple of the iterations before were like Artichoke, and I want to say Bluebird, and then, Ultra is the one we always hear about, MK Ultra.
And for those few people that maybe are listening that aren't, that was CIA chemical mind control experiments.
Yeah, they were convinced that we had a, quote, mind control gap because of the effectiveness of the totalitarian states of, North Korea, Soviet Russia, and Red China to sort of break dissidents and get them to, parrot the party line, and during show trials and things. And they certainly had issues of American soldiers captured during the Korean War engaging in propaganda for the enemy, and the sort of they must be mind controlled. The Soviets must have this new technology where they can change people's thought processes, and of course, what they were just seeing is the results of people being abused and traumatized. Which did not stop guys like Sid Gottlieb, who was the head of that department, to go ahead and abuse and traumatize various Americans and others in an attempt to reproduce these results in a way that they could always reliably go back to, and that they quickly learned that no, you can't reliably brainwash people. The human brain doesn't work that way. There's for us it was a very easy connection. I mean, we would tell when we were trying to sell Delta Green as a product, to other things like TV shows or TV networks or movie studios or game companies, video game companies. We'd often say, it's like Lovecraft meets Le Carré, and they'd look at us like they didn't understand what words we were saying. So eventually John Tynes realized the thing to say was, it's like Tom Clancy meets Stephen King. And then, everyone in the meeting would write that down because those things made money and they understood them, But that kind of a mashup is, I've gone out of my way to find examples of it. And there are a couple of people out there that certainly do a pretty good job of actually doing it as fiction. There's not that much out there at least in my opinion, there's not that much out there that's in movies and television. And when you say things like espionage, what do you consider what's going on in, say, Stranger Things? Right?
That's true. I hadn't thought about that, but you're right. Is it
espionage that you've got these government agents trying to get their test subject back? Trying to reacquire, was it 11? Is that her name?
But definitely the later seasons where the Russians have a secret base in Illinois.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, how much of this,
spoilers of people who have not seen season 2 and 3 of
it's been a few years, and I am going to drop some spoilers, so I don't know what to tell people. But the idea that does that count as espionage? Certainly, the government lab and the creepy agents who are pursuing 11 look a lot like the guys from Stephen King's The Shop, the Department of Scientific Intelligence, nicknamed The Shop after the science fiction story The Weapons Shops of Isher, because their department was all about developing new weapon systems, and they're trying to recover the most successful test subject from the Lot 6 drug program, which again is based on the kind of drug experiment that the CIA did with LSD in the 50s and 60s. And King has brought The Shop back to name drop it a few times in some other stories like the Tommyknockers, the expanded edition of The Stand. I want to say it's also in an expanded edition of The Mist. They're mentioned as the guys behind the Arrowhead project that blow a hole in reality. They're definitely all over the TV series The Golden Years and the movie The Lawnmower Man as the guys who are, again, working on cutting-edge technologies and are absolutely willing to kill to maintain the security of these technological breakthroughs.
And the Golden Years, for those who haven't seen it, again, it's probably 20 years, but there was a scene where the good guys and the bad guys were trying to both lock on a computer system, trying to lock a code to lock the other ones out. And that scene had me on this edge of my seat like nothing had for years.
Yeah, the idea that when I saw it when it was broadcast, so I was there for the cliffhanger, and there's a theatrical version of it you can see where they end the story, because which is sort of it's not great. It's not a great ending at all, but I was very happy with I guess it was R.D. Call was the antagonist agent from the shop, and I'm forgetting the name of the actress who was I'm totally blanking on the name of the actress who played the defecting shop agent who proceeds to try and keep our janitor from being taken back to a laboratory and dissected to find out why he is now moving backwards through time. But there's actually a lot of good stuff in Golden Years as far as the kind of stuff that we got from, Firestarter and from Stranger Things. On the other hand, there's that kind of thing that comes up every once in a while in horror that, and certainly there's I've been looking around.
It was. I cheated. I looked. I believe it was Felicity Huffman.
It is absolutely Felicity Huffman. But there was a great name. There's a great moment where Felicity Huffman is referring to R.D. Call's character and is like, everyone used to say John Rainbird was the best agent the shop ever produced, but I always knew it was this guy instead, and which I thought was beloved as a call out to the original, material from
Firestarter.
There's certainly that sort of level of where horror meets, if not espionage, then government power, But I'm going to just go throw out some of the titles I came across. Clive Barker did a story called Twilight at the Towers, where the agents of both sides of the Cold War have been transformed essentially into monsters in order to better fight the Cold War. And at some point they realize that they have nothing in common with the governments and the people who created them, and that really they should be in charge. The Cold War doesn't matter anymore to them. They're outside the human race. The sort of I was going to say that some of the earliest examples I ran across reading espionage plus horror. It was from one of the books. It was on the last Book of Blood. But I suddenly remember that one of the things that I ran across that also had this sort of the government meets supernatural horror was Charles Stross's A Colder War.
Yes, that's an amazing story.
Yeah, which sort of predates his descent into the laundry files, which absolutely is 1,000% espionage meets the supernatural. If people are not familiar with the laundry files by Charles Stross, they should check it out. Stross is a lovely guy, and because he mentioned Delta Green in the afterword of the first laundry file book, The Atrocity Archive, like literally the last line in the book of the edition I have reads something to the effect of, I've run across very few. I used to play Call of Cthulhu, and there's very few things that have gotten me excited about going back to the gaming table except Delta Green, and I'm like, wow. So I contacted him, and he was perfectly willing to chat online in a shocking kind of way, like, hey, you want to see the manuscript for the next book? He just sent it to me, like, in a Word document. And I'm like, does your agent know you're just giving away the book? I would imagine their agent would be pulling their hair out if they knew that they just handed off the manuscript. Here you go. Well, look at it. But I believe that was, I think it was the Jennifer Morgue that he handed off. It may have been the Fuller Memorandum.
Which the Jennifer Morgue, for those who haven't read, that is definitely, I think, the most espionage-y. In fact, it's almost it's almost a satire but also loving tribute to James Bond.
It absolutely is. And one of the things Strauss talks about is that each of these books, when they started off, he tried to combine his Lovecraftian horror with various spy novelists. Like Jennifer Morg is definitely a send-up of the Bond books by I'm suddenly forgetting the name of the author of the James Bond novels. Ian Fleming. But others were like, Robert Ludlum. Others were modeled after Jean Le Carre. So there was a deliberate attempt to sort of skip around and apply these other book styles in the world of espionage novels to these laundry file books. He's also when he turned up at the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival a couple times, one of the things he mentioned out loud was that he always wants to write those stories darker, and his agents and the publishers are always pushing back to keep those stories a little light. Every once in a while he'll slip in something, where he sort of hints at some darker stuff, and he has managed to do some pretty dark things inside the stories, but people might be sort of put off by the humor that's in there, because Strauss does a pretty good job of taking the piss out of bureaucracies.
Yeah, and what I like though, and first of all, I love that his character is named Bob Howard.
Oh yeah, that's another obvious tribute to Robert E., the guy who brought us Conan.
Yeah, but also, there's a lot of humor in it, and I love the humor, but it's how his character deals with all these things going around him. It's not that these cosmic entities or the end of the world is funny. It's how his main character deals with the stress of what's going around.
But with characters like his Q division being run by a guy's elderly
Pinky in the Brain,
elderly gay couple called Pinky in the Brain, comes off as sort of ludicrous, because of their nicknames, but even so, there's a line about, we keep a shotgun in the house in case we're ever faced with the case nightmare green scenario, and the shotgun isn't for firing at what's coming towards the house. It's for me, my wife, and any kids we might have. He makes it very clear that that's the escape route is to blow your head off when it all goes down. But then the story will sort of veer away from that pretty quickly. But I love Strauss's stuff. I have everything through the Rhesus chart on my bookshelf, and the rest of it is on Kindle, because I just ran out of room. I've had to go with a fair number of digital books over the years just because of the weight and volume of this stuff. However, still on paper is stuff from the writer Laird Barron. He definitely has a story called Old Virginia, which I believe is in The Beautiful Thing That Comes for Us All, in that short story collection, which is about Old Virginia is about basically the CIA doing experiments with witchcraft, and it does not work out well. There's Laird Barron definitely has a nice. He comes up against the edges of espionage and secret societies quite a bit in his stories. His stories often involve very rough and hard characters, like something you'd expect out of a Robert E. Howard, story, coming up against the supernatural and getting squished like a bug hitting a windshield. Because when the supernatural turns up, everything fails. Math fails, reality fails, and you might be the top predator in your reality, but that just all goes away once you're facing supernatural horror. Brian Lumley's Necroscope is another one to bring up, where the ability to be a necromancer and speak with the dead becomes an espionage tool. And Lumley did some stuff in his real life that was adjacent to espionage, and that he was in the British military police, I think, for his career. And Necroscope.
I knew he was in service in England, but I wasn't sure exactly where he served.
Necroscope always gave me one of my favorite lines of all time, which was as they're describing the British intelligence agency that deals with supernatural assets and threats. He describes it as not so much a branch of government, more like a creeper vine growing up the trunk of the tree of government. And that always, I was just like, mwah, thank you, Brian. That is exactly how I would love to describe Delta Green. There was a line from the not terribly good Mel Gibson movie Conspiracy Theory where somebody says, what agency do you work for? And he says, well, if the intelligence community is a family, we're the uncle nobody talks about.
Yeah.
Which I was also very happy with. Cody Goodfellow is another good weird fiction writer who's around now and is currently cranking out stuff pretty regularly. He wrote a pair of novels and some connected short stories, Radiant Dawn, Ravenous Dusk, that do an amazing job of sort of hooking in not just espionage and the FBI and special forces and special operations. He hooks all that into a really incredible story of the Cthulhu mythos, where he does some great Shoggoth work, is what he does. And he does this great thing in the story. Here's your spoiler, where he decides that cancer is the proto-matter that Shoggoths were created out of. That when we as humans get cancer, that's the matter of our bodies losing the thread and reverting back to the sludge, essentially, the non-functioning, only growing cells that the elder things originally carved us out of when they were creating the Shoggoths back in the day. And let's see here. I believe he also had a really good... So the idea behind the story being that, cancer is a window into Shoggoths being reborn. And it was super creepy and very well done, those two novels. He also, if I'm looking here, he also did another short story, and I am not finding it. I thought it was in the Book of Cthulhu 1. It doesn't appear to be. He did one where it was a story involving the Elder Things and the Elder Things, the Great Race of Yith, and a special forces operation in Colombia that is just fantastic. He made the Elder Things from the Mountains of Madness absolutely terrifying. Absolute terrifying, which honestly they don't usually get to be. Lovecraft drops the line in the original story. These were men, not shaped like you or I, but they were beings of intelligence and culture and scientific curiosity. Now that's all well and good, except we're the gunk in the petri dish to them. So that comes to how it's going to go between us and the elder things. But Goodfellow's Ravenous Dusk and Radiant Dawn and Ravenous Dusk are both excellent books that combine some of this stuff. Catherine Kurtz's Lammas Night is about trying to use ritual magic to stop the invasion of England in World War II. Robert McCammon wrote a book called The Wolf's Hour. I haven't read it, but I've seen it around, which is, I want to say, about a British werewolf fighting the Nazis during World War II and a spy thing. Tim Powers' Declare. That's sort of one of the greats. That is an amazing supernatural meets espionage, no holds bar set off during the World War II and the Cold War. And instead of dealing with something as prosaic as the great old ones, he uses the mythology of Arabia and the jinn as the problem. And the jinn come off as absolutely horrifying other worldly entities. And part of the story is that Russia has bound a jinn to it that is a ghoul, that Ghul, a jinn that devours the dead, which explains a lot of Russian history. As long as there is something for this thing to feast on, Russia will be protected and looked out for. And the story involves actual spies. Kim Philby, whose father was an anthropologist and somebody who studied Arabic culture and such, and his connection to archaeology in Arabia, and in case, and just a few of our listeners may not know, Ken Philby was a real English spy who recruited a spy ring out of Cambridge and basically gave away some of the best Western, I wouldn't say gave away, but gave to the Soviets some of Western's government's greatest secrets. Yeah, he was the Cambridge spy ring was incredibly effective. So effective, in fact, that despite the fact that guys like Donald Burgess and Guy Burgess, and Donald McLean, who were two other members of the ring, even though they had escaped to the east at some point when they came under suspicion, Kim Philby was able to get his name cleared, go back to work for MI6, and then later defect. Yeah. So badly ran circles around the British. He's pretty much the reason why John le Carre has a spy writing career, with Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy being a sort of fictionalized version of another mole hunt for the double agent inside British intelligence. Mole, in fact, being a term that John le Carre invented for the novel before it entered the parlance of espionage. But let's see. So Declare is extremely good. The funny thing is that in the afterwards on the Atrocity Archive by Charles Stross, the afterward is him talking about how friends of his, he'd show his manuscript for the Atrocity Archive to people, and then friends would say, "Have you read Tim Powers' Declare?" He says, "No." And they go, "Good, don't. It's a really great spies and supernatural thing, and if you read it, it'll pull you off course. Just keep doing what you're doing. Don't read it until after you're done finishing the Atrocity Archive." And then other friends would come and go, "Have you heard of Delta Green?" And he'd say, "No, I've never heard." He's like, "Oh, good. Don't read Delta Green. It's a really good spies and supernatural thing. If you read it, it'll pull you off course. So, just keep doing what you're doing." And, but then he goes back and reads both and was like, "Oh my God, these are so great." Caitlin Kiernan has done some agents, government agents, and the supernatural with a trio of novellas. The first two are Agents of Dreamlands and Black Helicopters. Black Helicopters is much more stream of consciousness and a little harder to follow since it jumps around in time and goes into the far, far future at points. But Agents of Dreamland is a really solid supernatural problem versus a group of professionals who have hard-bitten experience in dealing with this unpleasantness. And I'd also throw out, you had mentioned that this is maybe one of the first you read, was Richard Lupoff wrote in 1982 the documents in the case of Elizabeth Akeley, which was a pastiche of Lovecraft's Whisper in Darkness, all about how a government, it's all like in the form of a government agent's report about how he has been shadowing Elizabeth Akeley, who is the descendant of one of the cultists who assisted the Migo in the Whisper in Darkness. And it's quite a good
amazing story.
Yeah. And finally, I want to throw out William Murray. William Murray is a writer who's written a lot of great pulp stuff over the years. He's written a lot of modern Doc Savage stuff, some stuff for comics and things like that. But he's dipped his toes into horror more than a few times. And when he has done stuff related to Lovecraftian stories, he has created a framework for an agency so that his protagonists are connected. This is sort of the reason. It's sort of the reason we created Delta Green. We wanted a reason why the player characters playing Call of Cthulhu would always have a source for a new mission and a replacement when their characters would eventually get killed
Or go insane.
Yeah. So you'd always have a recruitment ground for replacements, and you'd always have a reason why you're going on your next mission. And that's kind of what Murray does in his Cryptic Events Evaluation Task Force, or Cryptic Events Evaluation section of the National Reconnaissance Office. In his stories To Clear the Earth, The Sothis Radiant, The Eldridge Collection, and Static. They're all pretty good. They're all pretty solid. I particularly like The Sothis Radiant and To Clear the Earth. Those are both excellent short stories. Really, they're all fourth grade. I shouldn't try and stack them in any way. They're all excellent. These are the ones that I am aware of. I think we brought up Dennis Wheatley, who was a writer of both espionage thrillers and supernatural stories, perhaps most well known for being the source of the Hammer horror film The Devil Rides Out.
Yes.
With Charles Gray as the stand-in, I guess, for what's his name? The rinky-dink Satanist from the turn of the century. I'm suddenly forgetting. The beast, the wickedest man in the world.
Aleister Crowley?
Thank you. Blanking on Aleister Crowley. Yeah, Charles Gray fills in as Aleister Crowley, and Chris Lee plays the Duc de Richelieu, who is the member of the royalty, supernatural expert who is going to solve this problem. It's a fantastic movie. If anyone has not seen it, definitely check out The Devil Rides Out. It is a marvelous Hammer horror film. Bad special effects and all. I have not read Wheatley's book They Use Dark Forces, but I have, when I was doing some research, apparently he does it. He combines espionage and supernatural horror in this novel, so I should probably go take a look at it, as I am always sniffing around for exactly the genre, because again, our Delta Green stuff is that's what I'm writing. So
sure.
I'm always interested in seeing how other authors are handling the material. The one thing I want to say...
I hate to cut you off there, but we are about to run out of time.
Sure.
And I want to really thank you, because you've obviously put a lot of research into this. But anything maybe you wanted to share with the audience in sort of closing, or maybe things you've learned from your research?
I will say this, that while there are some... There are some horror aspects that show up in espionage fiction, in fact, in real life. The question of who you can trust, the idea that people you've known all your life might not be who you think they are. Of course, books like The Manchurian Candidate, create the situation where you could be brainwashed and not know it. And which is akin to being possessed,
Exactly.
But, the one I want to really kind of throw out is that it was one of my inspirations for the ideas behind Delta Green. That is, during we had this thing in the background of the Delta Green material that Delta Green functioned inside the OSS pretending to be a psychological warfare unit whose duty was to analyze folklore and mythology for things that they could use to upset the enemy and discombobulate the enemy. And this is actually something that really happened. And has happened most commonly in the world of counterinsurgency warfare, which is always right next door to espionage. The Cold War and the CIA was oftentimes less about creating intelligence networks and creating sources of covert information as it was about engaging in sort of the counterinsurgency warfare, a way to intervene in conflicts of the Cold War that was more than diplomacy, but less than open warfare. And there is a very famous incident where horror and espionage combine, and I don't know if it was, I don't think it was Ted Shackley, who was the head of, Ted Shackley was the head of the CIA's operations director for a very long time in the 60s, the 50s. But it might be Ed Lansdale. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's Ed Lansdale. Ed Lansdale was the model for the Quiet American. And the Ugly American. Well, not so much the Quiet American, definitely the character of the Ugly American, which is another espionage in Southeast Asia story.
Yes.
But Lansdale, when he was in the Philippines in the 1950s, there was a communist uprising in the against the newly independent government of the Philippines. We did manage to turn the Philippines loose after World War II on schedule, like we had originally promised, after breaking our original promise when we took the Philippines off of Spain back in '98. But there was an incident where, in order to deny the rural mountain-dwelling rebels access to certain areas of the jungle where they were at home and undercover and could not be dug out and could not be found, the CIA came up with a plan to simulate the existence of a palangong or an aswang, which is a vampire. Which is a South Pacific, Philippines, Indonesia, Melanesia kind of vampire, famous as the flying head vampire. As the head that detaches from the body and pulls all of these withered organs out of the body that it inhabits at night. Or during the day, it's hidden inside a regular villager like everybody else. But at night, the head detaches and flies through the air and slithers in windows, which is why people will put nails in their windowsill with the spikes pointing up so that a palangong will accidentally impale or entangle its guts in the windowsill if it tries to get into your house. It's sort of their version of hanging garlic. And the palangong is known for both sucking blood out of people and killing them, but also very well known for sucking babies out of expectant mothers it is sort of the basis of it's a mythological basis connected with miscarriages. Mm-hmm. But it's also about disease, much like most vampire myths. And so the CIA allegedly sent in special forces teams to cooperate with the Filipino government, and the plan was to kidnap, take alive Filipino rebels from outposts, sentry positions, the tail end Charlie off a march, grab them, and then allow the body to be found with a couple of holes in the neck, completely drained of blood. They execute them through exsanguination and leave the body where the rebels could find them and say, oh shit, we can't stay on this mountain, there's a Pelengong. Yes. And they would be able to try and shift the rebels out of an area without having to use military force. That story right there, which as far as I know is true. Whether it was effective or not depends on who's
telling the tale.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about, the marvelous thing about spies is that, generally speaking, you can count on them to lie. That's 90% of the job. And, which is 100% of the job of fiction. And writing about the supernatural, almost 100% of that is lies. So, yeah, there's a lot of overlap in that Venn diagram. But the one thing I would leave with is that the story of the Filipino vampires that were brought to life by intelligence agencies and special forces teams. There's you get a little bit of that later in Vietnam. Where
with the ghost voices.
Yes, the ghost voices, where they would have speakers in airplanes, and they'd cut the engines and glide over the treetops, over the and shout down curses, on the Viet Cong, saying that if they died away from their home village, their soul will be lost in the jungle forever, and other such things. In fact, I want to say Ted Grau wrote, was it Ted Grau? Wrote I Am the River? I think that's
I'm not familiar with that one.
It's a, I'm going to quickly throw it into Amazon. I'm pretty sure it's T.E. Grau, but let me just throw this in here. I have read it recently, and it starts off sort of like, T.E. Grau. It starts off like, there's going to be an attempt to use the ghost voices on a bigger level in Vietnam to create this psychological warfare thing to shake up the Viet Cong. And, well, it doesn't go well, obviously. But again, the connection, when you say the question between spies and supernatural, spying is usually more of an urban activity. And the others, the very closely connected part of that coin is that sort of counterinsurgency warfare stuff, hunting the Viet Cong or, stuff going on in Central America.
Yeah.
That's a little more of a rural thing, but there's still a horror aspect that is very easy to find in those conflicts, not the least of which because counterinsurgency warfare gets pretty horrific pretty fast. The Sendero Luminoso, the communist guerrillas down in Peru.
The Shining Path.
Yeah. They used to cut the feet off of Indian villagers who would not cooperate with them. They'd cut their feet off and reattach them to the body backwards. And the mythology amongst the Highland Indians, I guess the Quechua Indians, was that if you mutilated a body like this, you'd be lost in the afterlife. You would not be able to walk to the afterlife because you'd be turned around and confused by the mutilations. So this stuff shows up a lot in counterinsurgency situations. It's particularly ugly, and you don't have to go very far to find some horror, and all of it's generated by humans and not by monsters.
Well, thank you so much, and we will definitely, because to be honest, you and I could probably discuss this for hours and hours, but we will definitely have you back on the show soon.
Well,
so thank you very much.
I'm glad you found it useful, and thanks for having me on. Anytime you have a hole in the schedule you need to fill, I'm more than happy to fill it up with words.
Excellent. Well, thank you, and you have a great day.
Take care, David.
Thank you once again for listening to People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos. You can help show your support by going to the show notes and following any of the links that'll tell you how to support the show and how to support our guests. And thank you to all of our guests who you can find in the show notes. Rate, review, subscribe, and remember, patrons get priority access to asking us questions, suggesting topics, even, I don't know, submitting stuff. Actually, you don't have to be a patron to submit anything. That's how Dave got on the show, and that's how you can get on the show too. It's the People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos. Rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends. Thank you for listening. Back to the show. And that break has broken. Dave, how are you doing?
I am doing well.
Oh, it's Cyäegha.
Cyäegha, spelled C-Y-A with an umlaut on top of it.
Yeah.
E-G-H-A.
Yeah. So, what do we know about Cyäegha, Dave?
Darn little. And I think that Cyäegha likes it that way.
Yeah.
In fact, when I got the list who we're talking about, I think I recognize the name, but I'll have to do some research. So it's this big, giant eyeball with like a couple pupils in one eyeball with like a lot of snake-like tentacles.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of Cyäegha fan art because it's just like awesome looking.
Oh yeah.
There's also a metal band called Cyäegha, and but not a lot of stories. I didn't think I had read any stories. I still don't.
Yeah.
The one story that I tracked down is by Eddie C. Burton. And I'm not sure where I can find a copy, but I'll do some checking, and maybe next week we'll tell people where. And that was Darkness, My Name Is.
Yeah.
Which I believe was published in the early 90s. So it's a later creation.
Okay.
It's a later creation.
1976, I found. It was originally written in 1976 and then was came out in Disciples of Cthulhu, first edition, in 1996.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So the reprint. And it makes sense that it's from the 70s.
Yeah.
Because when you do find things about it, it's very Derluthian heresy.
Yeah.
In the fact that it's labeled as a earth elemental. So one of the things, though, I do like about it's trapped.
Yeah.
Just like Cthulhu is. But there's like 5 like vulture statues or vulture-like statues that have trapped it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a cool concept. Honestly, and that way we see the other Derluthian heresy, the War in Heaven. That you can kind of assume maybe these are elder gods or these were created by the elder gods.
Yeah.
So, if you're doing a game, here's the cool thing about Cyäegha. If you and I didn't know a lot about it, your players probably don't.
Yeah.
Unless you're playing with Scott Glancy or Robin Laws, they probably don't. They probably don't know a lot about this particular creature. So you can do whatever the heck you want.
Yeah.
But, they come across these vulture statues. Oh, and they move it or something, and oops, we just released this, giant eyeball tentacle. In fact, I joke around that there's not much to be said, but there isn't. Yeah. I broke out my 4th edition Call of Cthulhu Malus Monstromo or Monstro, which is that big giant thick book of
love that book.
Lovecraft creatures and not the new version, which has 2 books, but this one, and it's only got like a column on this creature.
Yeah.
Where so there really isn't a lot other than it's worshipped by this town in Germany, and that's always sort of that gives you a lot of things. There's this, and I haven't gone through it. I don't know if it's mentioned in this or not because I haven't really gone through the new Berlins, but that's a great book or setting. Weimar Republic or even post World War One, Germany, or some sort of Achtung Cthulhu or World War Cthulhu campaign.
Yeah, and just to let everyone who's out there listening know, Cyäegha would be found in the Schwarzwald, which is the Black Forest, and like dark really within like super isolated parts of the Black Forest. Really isolated parts. So it's going to be like kind of in the southern western part of Germany, kind of closer to Switzerland and France. Very, very rural, very huntsman lodge, very wild boars, very, very, hills that maybe are smoking underneath from coal mines still going. I mean, I know we've talked about that in like past episodes of like Centerville, Pennsylvania, but there's hills out in this neck of the woods that have been smoking since the 16th century, I believe.
Yeah, and what I was thinking too, this would, if you're doing like a World War Cthulhu, so this creature, it's being bound by like the 5 vulture statues. What if one of them gets damaged by artillery shells? My idea is a modern day, like a Cthulhu Now or something. You and your buddies are in an isolated village for Oktoberfest, and one of your buddies comes back to the village drunkenly with a vulture statue in his hands, being like, "Hey, look what I found!" And then the village folk all just go pale and freak out. And then it's up to you and your surviving friends to get Cyäegha back. So I'm going to even give another history one.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Is what if you're doing Cthulhu Invictus?
Ooh.
And I realize, that I'm probably, you're much better on geography than I am.
Yeah.
But I know that the 3 Roman legions were lost in the Tannenbaum Forest.
Oh yeah,
which is probably no part of this area.
Yeah,
but you could have that maybe the Romans got to stop the barbarians from destroying the vultures, or maybe your players are barbarians and got to stop the Romans from trying to cart away these vulture statues.
Or the Saxons jumping out of the trees, out of the Schwarzwald at the Romans, are using an eye tentacle monster, and you're a Roman legion who's all like, "Awe, true to Kaiser, death to." Anyway, and your job is to figure out how to trap this eye monster so that you can go back to Rome and be like, "Yeah, no, we totally whooped up on those savages." Saxony's totally ours. Yeah, it's,
So yeah, I think that not only does this creature give you a lot of potential, because if your players don't know anything about it, then they can't say, well, no, he doesn't have this power.
He doesn't shoot lasers out of his eye.
Yeah. and as we talk of it too, you know what it kind of reminds me of as we're discussing this?
Yeah.
A super beholder.
Oh, yeah.
So this would be an excellent deity for the beholders to worship.
Definitely.
In a D&D campaign.
Yeah, definitely kind of like the whole concept of how like Dagon and Hydra are the biggest of their group. I could imagine how Cyäegha would be like the oldest or the most powerful of the beholders or something like that, or like some sort of paragon beholder.
Or make a great patron for either a PC or an NPC Eldritch Warlock.
Ooh, yeah. I like that idea. Or I like the idea of the fact that Cyäegha may just be some sort of like great wizard, kind of like how people are like, Master Yoda's this green little weirdo guy. It's like, oh yeah, no, you have to go to Cyäegha to find out about that. And people are like, who the heck's Cyäegha? And it's like, well, okay, to get to Cyäegha, you have to do this, and you have to do that, and you have to do this, but don't do this. And it's like, don't move the vulture statues, or Cyäegha will be released. But since Cyäegha's trapped, you can ask Cyäegha about magic, or mysteries of life, or life among the stars, or whatever you need to find out. You kind of have a captive audience who has a cosmic mind, and there's a use for Cyäegha right there.
but every time it gives you an answer, it's slowly trying to manipulate the characters into removing one of the vulture statues.
Ooh, yeah. Or tries to manipulate the character into like learning spells that are going to do something like knock over one of the statues or anything like that. Like, this is earthquake.
What? You don't know Thunderclap?
Yeah. Here's telekinesis or magic hand. Practice it on those statues. Yeah. All right. What else do we got for Cyäegha? What else?
That really is it. I mean, I think it may have been mentioned in a few other stories, but it really comes in that one later. I remember. I get that the 70s were 50 years ago, but that's still modern to me. That's still modern.
Sure.
If it happened in my lifetime, it's not history.
Yeah.
But it's sort of the modern Lovecraft creature, and I think if you're going to be a gamer, I don't know. I suspect, and maybe one of the reasons we don't see more of it, I suspect it's probably copywritten.
Yeah.
So maybe that's why we don't see more of it.
Yeah.
So you may not be able to use it in your books, in your writing, but you definitely use it in your games.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And I just have one thing I want to say. One final thing. Cyäegha murder maze in like the year 5000 or like, some sort of like cyberpunk setting or something like that. Cyberpunk Berlin and, Cyäegha's, I don't know. I just I don't know. Cyäegha and murder maze. That's all I want to say. All right.
Well said.
Well said. Thank you again, everyone, for listening. Again, this episode is brought to you by not Golden Goat CBD. That was last month. Copper Cow pour over coffee. Little individual coffees that you can pour into a cup and watch it drip, drip, drip. And it takes, couple minutes to do so. And then you got yourself a nice, super hot super toasty cup of coffee. The lattes come with condensed milk, and it's super fun. And also glary guitar, so and musical instruments in general. But I definitely I'm excited about this glary that I'm getting tomorrow. So next episode, hopefully you'll hear it. And
Joseph Curwen.
Yeah. Joseph Kerwin. Check out Scott Glancy's links in the show notes. And also check out upcoming shows and sponsors. So thank you again, everyone. We'll see you next time when I think we're talking about Dagon and Hydra and all that fun stuff. And we'll see you next time, everyone.
Bye.
That was